Good morning, you are watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Hasanov and let's see the headlines. Global financial markets tumble as Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China. North Korea slams U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio over rogue state remark, says it will respond strongly to provocations. Georgian police arrested anti-government protesters amid election demands. U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China have led to significant market reactions, with the U.S. dollar strengthening and global currencies taking a hit. Trump acknowledged the short-term pain these tariffs could cause, but emphasized the need for them to address trade imbalances. On Monday, the Canadian dollar and Mexican peso tumbled to multi-year lows, while China's yuan hit a record low. The euro also saw a sharp drop as fears of a full-scale trade war intensified. Canada and Mexico responded to Trump's actions with retaliatory tariffs, while China is preparing to challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization. Trump also confirmed that tariffs on the European Union are definitely happening, though he did not specify when.
I wouldn't say there's a timeline, but it's going to be pretty soon. I'm not concerned. We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country. Not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it fast. We're going to make America great again.
U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed new tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China, citing a nationwide emergency over fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration. The move is expected to strain trade relations with Canada and Mexico, already vowing to retaliate.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs on goods imported from the United States' three largest trading partners, China, Mexico, and Canada. Starting Tuesday, the U.S. will impose 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, while Chinese goods will face a 10% duty. Canadian energy exports will be taxed at 10%, while Mexican energy imports will face 25% tariffs. The White House defends these measures as a response to illegal immigration and drug trafficking, especially the fentanyl crisis. Economists warn that with Canada, Mexico, and China making up over 40% of U.S. imports, these tariffs could disrupt global trade and reduce U.S. growth by 1.5%. Industry leaders also warn of supply chain disruptions, with the auto sector and Canadian shipments under $800 facing significant challenges. Canada and Mexico have vowed swift retaliation. Ontario Premier Doug Ford supports a strong response, while Nova Scotia has started removing U.S. alcohol from store shelves. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has instructed her economy minister to implement tariff and non-tariff measures to protect Mexico's economic interests. The White House has warned that tariffs could increase further if Canada, Mexico, or China retaliate.
Canada is hitting back after President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian imports. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new charges, warning Americans that they will feel the impact.
In response to United States tariffs, Canada is imposing 25% tariffs on $107 billion worth of American goods. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed that the first $21 billion in tariffs will begin on February 4th.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time, to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
The tariffs will cover a wide range of U.S. products, from food and drinks to everyday consumer goods. Trudeau warned that these measures could lead to higher prices for consumers.
Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more.
Trudeau also mentioned that Canada may take additional action on energy, which is essential for both economies. The Prime Minister emphasized that the trade relationship between the two countries is crucial, with billions of dollars in daily trade, and that working together is a better option.
As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
Trudeau's comments reflect the growing tensions in trade between the United States and Canada, emphasizing the need for cooperation to keep the trade relationship strong.
Tensions rise over new U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. In Beijing, residents are urging a balanced response, warning of economic fallout.
China is bracing for the impact of new U.S. tariffs. President Trump has imposed a 10% tax on Chinese imports, saying Beijing must curb the flow of fentanyl. Beijing residents worry about economic strain and rising costs.
Well, I think we should take measures on two sides. On the one hand, since the United States imposed additional tariffs on China, we can also take corresponding measures. Secondly, diplomatic means are also necessary.
China's government is pushing back, filing a case with the World Trade Organization and pledging countermeasures. Some residents say retaliation must be carefully weighed.
I think this is a very systematic thing. It cannot be simply said that if they increase tariffs, we should also increase tariffs. This will actually have a bad impact on people's livelihood, but I think our country will also give corresponding countermeasures.
China's foreign ministry insists the fentanyl issue is America's problem and that Beijing has already provided support. As trade tensions rise, the next move remains uncertain.
Meanwhile, tensions are rising in Panama following U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks about retaking control of the Panama Canal. As U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited the country, protesters took to the streets, rejecting what they call a threat to Panama's sovereignty.
Mass protests broke out in Panama City as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with President Raul Mulino. Demonstrators calling for an end to U.S. interference. Union leaders and activists accused President Donald Trump of pushing for a takeover of the Panama Canal, citing his recent statements that China's presence in the region posed a national security threat to the United States.
He wants to annex Canada, he wants to invade Mexico, he wants to take the canal, he wants to rip Greenland away from Denmark. Trump is looking for World War III.
Trump told reporters at Joint Base Andrews that he did not believe U.S. troops would be necessary in Panama, but reiterated his threats to take control of the Panama Canal.
Secretary of State Rubio is in Panama right now, and we're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China. That was given to Panama foolishly. But they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen.
At a Senate hearing last week, U.S. officials suggested imposing fines and restrictions on Panamanian-flagged vessels entering U.S. ports as a pressure tactic to curb Panama's relations with China. President Raul Mulino reaffirmed Panama's control over the canal, dismissing foreign influence claims. He stated that Panama would not renegotiate its authority over the world's second busiest waterway, emphasizing the sovereignty of the nation.
There is no doubt that the canal is operated by our country, and it will continue to be. I don't think there has been disagreement on that. President Trump has his opinion on the presence of China, which will be clarified in due course in the technical instances of the canal.
Meanwhile, the US and Panama reached agreements on migration policies, including expanding repatriation programs for migrants traveling through the Darien Gap. These programs are part of broader efforts to manage the flow of migrants from South America to the US. Despite diplomatic efforts, the dispute over the Panama Canal remains unresolved, fueling concerns about worsening US-Panama relations. Both nations continue to engage in talks, but tensions remain high, especially as Panama seeks to maintain its independence from external pressures regarding the canal.
North Korea has issued its first official criticism of the Trump administration, condemning U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio for calling the country a rogue state in a media interview. A statement from North Korea's foreign ministry warned that Pyongyang will never tolerate any provocation and will respond with strong countermeasures. The statement also criticized the U.S. Missile Defense Shield Plan, arguing that it further justifies North Korea's efforts to enhance its military capabilities. Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an order to develop an American Iron Dome aimed at countering ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missile threats.
I'm looking forward to working with.
Recovery teams in the United States continue operations after the mid-air collision over the Potomac River involving an American Airlines jet and a military helicopter. Family members of the 67 victims of a deadly collision between an airliner and an Army helicopter visited the crash site along the Potomac River, escorted by police. Officials have confirmed the identification of 55 victims, while search efforts continue for the remaining passengers and debris. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has completed its assessments and is set to begin lifting aircraft wreckage from the river at first light on Monday. The wreckage will be moved to a designated hangar at Washington Reagan National Airport, where investigators will examine the remains of both aircraft. Hundreds of thousands of protesters gathered in Berlin, marching against the SDU's proposed immigration law. The protest, which also spread to other cities, came after the SDU's attempt to pass stricter immigration measures faced backlash.
Around 160,000 people gathered near the Bundestag, Berlin, and marched towards the Christian Democratic Union headquarters, voicing strong opposition to the CDU's approach to immigration. The protest followed CDU leader Friedrich Merz's attempt to pass a stricter immigration bill with support from the far-right Alternative for Germany. The proposed law aimed to limit family reunifications and tighten border controls. Merz defended it as a response to crimes involving immigrants, but critics argued it violated European law. The bill failed to secure a majority in Parliament, with some CDU deputies refusing to back it, weakening Merz's position ahead of the February election.
I think it's a good thing that we stand up now and don't leave it to our parliamentarians to stand up for our democracy.
Similar protests took place in Hamburg, Stuttgart and Leipzig, reflecting widespread opposition to CDU's stance on immigration.
Police in Georgia arrested several anti-government protesters as thousands of demonstrators demanding new parliamentary elections briefly blocked a motorway on the edge of the capital, Tbilisi. Protests had dwindled in recent weeks, but they renewed with greater force on Sunday.
The Georgian government continues to struggle with protests as thousands of people took to the streets of Tbilisi on Sunday. The protesters, including opposition leaders Nika Melia and former Tbilisi mayor Georgi Ugulava, called for new elections, accusing the government of election fraud. Protesters briefly blocked a motorway on the outskirts of the capital. Earlier on Sunday, the Interior Ministry had warned that blocking the motorway was a criminal offence, punishable by up to 4 years in prison. As tensions escalated, several protesters were taken into custody. Among those arrested were opposition leaders. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas condemned the crackdown, calling it unacceptable and expressing that Europe stood with the Georgian people. The government, led by Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze, maintained that the elections had been free and fair. It also accused several Western-backed forces, former President Salome Zurabishvili and the opposition of attempting to overthrow the government through street protests. Georgians had been rallying nightly since November, when the ruling Georgian Dream Party announced it would suspend European Union accession talks until 2028.
A hospital in Goma is overwhelmed with wounded civilians after days of intense fighting. Medical staff say it's a struggle to keep up.
The Red Cross reports over 1,000 injured people have been treated at a local hospital in Goma since the intense fighting has erupted in eastern Congo. Many are women and children, with more than 80 new patients arriving each day.
It was around 1 p.m. on Sunday when I was in my tent with other people and a bullet hit me in the abdomen. I didn't know where it came from. My friends immediately took me and put me here to the hospital. Since Sunday, they have been treating me and I have started to recover. See, I can even sit up now. Since Sunday, today is the first time I'm able to put something in my stomach by drinking this tea, because the bullet had hit my stomach.
Doctors say the injuries are severe, with many caused by explosives in crowded areas.
We are generally used to treating gunshot wounds. These are entry-exit wounds that reach an organ or limb. But in recent days, we have received many injuries, not only from bullets, because these are civilians who do not wear bulletproof vests. As a result, we have seen many abdominal injuries. In addition to that, we have received injuries caused by explosive devices. The use of explosives in a populated area has resulted in many injuries. These are complex wounds. The medical care is very difficult and complicated.
The influx comes as Goma remains tense after its capture by M23 rebels. Congolese troops are holding back their advance toward Bukavu, but the humanitarian crisis is worsening. The UN says the city is still tense and volatile, with peacekeepers sheltering displaced civilians.
Medical evacuations from Gaza resumed, with patients crossing into Egypt via the Rafah border. This marks the first opening since May, providing much-needed access to medical treatment. The World Health Organization estimates that thousands of more patients still require evacuation, stressing the urgent need for additional medical routes.
After months of waiting, Gazan people are finally seeing a glimmer of hope with the recent ceasefire deal, as the Rafah border crossing reopened for the first time in months. This allowed medical evacuation to resume, with 37 patients and their families crossing into Egypt for essential treatment. Al-Ata Najjar, the mother of a child with health problems, felt relief when she learned her son would be getting medical care.
When I got the call yesterday about traveling for treatment, I felt so relieved. I knew my son would get the help he needs, God willing.
Ahmed Khalil, the father of Aline, who has a sight condition, was happy to finally get the chance to take his daughter for treatment outside Gaza.
We've been trying to get out for treatment since the border was closed. By God's will, today we will be able to travel for our child's treatment.
May Ghani Samour, the mother of Mu'tasam Billah, who suffers from a rare autoimmune disease, shared her happiness about her son's chance for medical care.
When we were told that we could head to Rafah for Mu'tasam's treatment, we were overwhelmed with happiness. It's a chance for him to survive.
Dr. Richard Bieberkorn, a WHO representative, said more medical routes are urgently needed to help the thousands of critical patients still in Gaza.
WHO estimates that between 12 and 14,000 critical patients need to be medevaced outside Gaza. Yeah. So this is just the start. We have to really speed up the pace. What we need is medical corridors now outside Gaza to ensure that those 12 to 14,000 patients who are in need for the treatment they need and deserve, that they get out.
Pisma Akbar from the WHO confirmed that the patients and their family members were successfully evacuated to Egypt for specialized care.
We have just concluded today's medical evacuation, where 37 patients along with 39 companions were evacuated to Egypt via Rafah, where they will continue receiving specialized care.
This evacuation is just one step toward helping the many patients in Gaza get the care they urgently need.
Turkey is willing to accept Palestinians released from Israeli prisons as part of the ongoing ceasefire agreement. That's according to Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Speaking at a joint press conference with Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani in Doha, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stated that Turkey, along with other nations, is prepared to host freed Palestinian detainees if required under the terms of the agreement. He stressed that ensuring the implementation and continuation of the ceasefire is a priority, adding that other nations must also fulfill their commitments to maintain stability. Fidan reaffirmed Turkey's position against the forced displacement of Palestinians, stating that Ankara fully supports the Cairo Declaration, which calls for the protection of Palestinian rights and an end to Israel's military operations in Gaza. The Turkish Foreign Minister also addressed regional security concerns, stating that Turkey is closely watching the new administration in Syria regarding its stance on the terrorist organization PKK-YPG. Fidan underlined that Turkey remains committed to preventing the presence and expansion of terrorist organizations in its southern borders and will take necessary measures to ensure regional stability. Turkish drone manufacturer and global leader in unmanned aerial vehicle exports, Baykar, has once again been recognized as the top exporter in the country's defense and aviation sector. Baykar achieved slightly over $1.8 billion in exports in 2024, according to the statement by the Presidency of the Defense Industries of Turkey, thus being positioned as the first among the top 10 exporters. Baykar, which realized 1/3 of the sector's exports in 2023, also accounted for 1/4 of the total exports of the defense and aviation sector in 2024. Becoming one of the top players in the defense and aerospace sector in Turkey, Baykar has gained significant attention and popularity in recent years. Its Bayraktar TB2 combat drones gained prominence globally after being used by Ukraine's military against Russian forces, as well as in campaigns in Azerbaijan and North Africa. Thanks to Baykar's success on a global scale, Turkey has left behind the United States, Israel, and China in terms of UAV exports. Turkey commanded 65% of the world's UAV export market, according to a US-based think tank Center for New American Security report in September 2024. So far, the company has signed agreements with 34 countries for its popular Bayraktar TB2 and 10 countries for its heavy Akıncı combat drones. Currently, it's also developing a Bayraktar TB3 drone, tailored for the country's first aircraft carrier and an unmanned fighter jet, Kızıl Elma. Boasting the ability to fold its wings, the Bayraktar TB3 drone late last year became the first of its kind in the world to take off successfully and land on a short runway warship. We are done for now, but don't go far. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful morning.